Hello, this is Jason Matthews. I'm a retired law enforcement officer, and today I'm going to be answering the question, do you have to talk to the police? I'm also going to be answering a bonus question is, should you talk to the police? And I think you're going to be very surprised by my answers because you see a lot of misinformation online, a lot of people with biases such as lawyers saying things online, and just general ignorance online about this subject. But before we get started, if you support the police, click the like button. And if you do not support the police, click the dislike button. It's anonymous. I'm just curious of where you stand because I see a lot of divisiveness out there. And I get accused myself, which is funny, of being pro-police and also being anti-police. Let's get started. Do you have to talk to the police? Are you required to talk to the police? Now, this is a very nuanced subject. It's not a black and white subject. As with everything in life, nothing is black and white. So there's a couple ways to approach this. Are you required to do anything in your life? No, you do not have to talk to the police. You do not have to wake up in the morning. You do not have to eat. You don't have to drink, but there's going to be consequences, see? So even though you don't have to do something, doesn't mean that it's consequence free. So that's one way to look at it. In the context of police and interactions with the police, in that context with interactions with the police, are you required to speak with the police? Absolutely not. However, there could be serious consequences. You could be arrested. You could be given a fine. You could be detained. There are many negative consequences that could happen to you if you do not speak to the police. So that's one way of looking at the subject. The other way of looking at the subject is, let's restate the question. Are you required to speak to the police? It depends. As with all subjects, everything is situationally dependent. And it depends on not only the situation, but it also depends on the laws in that jurisdiction that you're in, because laws differ. There's no general, universal answer to this question. But there are some generalities that I can deduct from this question and answer from a general perspective. And the way to frame this is, generally speaking, if the police do not have probable cause and they walk up and ask you a question, for example, do you have to answer? No, you do not have to answer. But then again, if any random citizen walks up to you and asks you a question, do you have to respond? No, you don't. And the reason is you have freedom to leave. If you're not being detained and just an officer walks up to you randomly and asks you a question like, where's the drugs? And he doesn't have probable cause, and you're free to leave and he's not holding you there, then you can just stand there and not answer. But you can do that with anybody, right? And there's this misconception out there that police cannot just walk up and talk to you. Police and any random citizen, including the police, can walk up and just start talking to you or can start asking you questions. And this is the training we get in the academy, to just walk up to people and start talking to them, or walk up to people and start asking questions. That's how we get information. That's how we get intelligence. And there's nothing illegal about that. The key is to know if police do not have probable cause, then you do not have to talk to them. Now, if police have probable cause, do you have to talk to them? It depends. There are certain questions, and this is pertaining to most jurisdictions that I've heard of. If police ask you identifying questions and they do have probable cause, in other words, your name, date of birth, and such, then yes, you do have to answer those questions or there's consequences. In other words, you can be arrested for not answering those questions, because if there's a crime that has been committed and you're a suspect, for example, this is just one example, the police have to be able to identify you. And if they cannot identify you and either give you a ticket or arrest you and such, or give you a mandatory court appearance, then they will have to take you to jail to try and find out who you are. And they'll hold you there until they find out who you are. So in that respect, yes, you do have to answer questions of the police from a limited context. Now, do you have to answer questions about the case itself, the details of the case, even if police have probable cause? No, you do not. And if police are questioning you about the case and they're holding you there, or they're saying you're detained and you're not free to leave, and they're asking you questions, then they're supposed to read you your Miranda rights. Now, there's a big misconception out there that many people do not know about. If the police are not asking you questions, they do not have to read you your rights. Only if you are being asked questions do you have to be read your rights. Now, this could be different in different jurisdictions. I'm going off of national case law because some jurisdictions are more restrictive. There could be a policy in place or a law in place that is applicable to that local jurisdiction that says if you are arresting someone or detain someone, you have to read them their rights. But that's a local decision. Now, let me answer the question, should you talk to the police? And I've heard lawyers out there say, no, you should never talk to the police, ever. And I'm going to say, bad advice. Bad advice. You're not considering factors here. And this tells you the limited amount of knowledge that attorneys have. And if you want to get legal advice, because I'm not giving you legal advice here, I'm not telling you what to do in certain circumstances. Legal advice should come from an attorney. Now, there's some pretty terrible attorneys out there, and there's some good ones. So that's on you to do your research to get advice from the proper attorney. Just because they're on YouTube doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. So should you talk to the police? That's a good question. And it really depends. It's situationally dependent, as with all things. Again, nothing is black and white. Number one, a lot of times, if you have nothing to hide, it's probably a better idea that you talk to the police. Because if you don't talk to the police, that is probably going to raise some suspicions. I'm just telling you from a practical, real-world career that I had in decades of experience. If someone is not answering questions, basic questions, I'm going to be very suspicious of that person because most people, the average person, will answer questions. Are you required to answer questions? For example, if you're under arrest or, for example, if you're detained? No, you're not required to, but you're going against what the average person would do. If the average person is an innocent person, they really have nothing to hide, number one. Now, if you're guilty and you know you're guilty, then yeah, in that circumstance, if you know you're guilty and you have something to hide, you probably shouldn't talk to the police. But then again, that's even a convoluted subject because now we're getting into what's right and what's wrong. If you committed a crime against someone, this is a very interesting way to approach this subject because it's philosophical here now at this point. If you actually committed a crime, for example, against someone, should you admit that to the police? I don't know. It depends on your morals, right? It depends on your morals. Technically speaking, if you're trying to get out of being punished, yeah, you probably shouldn't speak to the police. But if you feel guilty about it and you feel bad about it, maybe you should talk to the police. Or at least maybe just get a lawyer and say, hey, I did it. I committed the crime. And then the lawyer can take it from there. But see, from a moral perspective, are the lawyers moral people? If you committed a crime and you know you committed a crime and you feel bad about it, should you admit guilt? I don't know. It's a very good philosophical question. The other reasons why you probably should talk to the police is, for example, let's say that you witness a crime against somebody. Don't you think that you should talk to the police if they're called to the scene? Like someone victimizes someone hurts someone, and you're a witness. Shouldn't you give the information that you have, the witness information? Shouldn't you give the information that you saw? Shouldn't you be interviewed and be given all that information from a moral perspective? Or let's say that you have information about someone who needs help right now. Let's say there is a hurricane and people are going door to door and they are asking, hey, are people alive in your neighborhood or something? I'm just making things up as I'm going here, but don't you think you should give information to the police to help other people? In my mind, absolutely. So there's several circumstances where you should probably talk to the police, but I mean, do you have to? No, you don't have to. Likely, I mean, I don't know all laws and all jurisdictions. Maybe there's a law that says you're obstructing police if you don't talk to them and there's a medical emergency or there's a natural disaster. There could be, that's a possibility. So the answer to this question is not as black and white as you think. Despite what I've seen on YouTube, lawyers come out and say, you should never talk to the police under any circumstances. That's, to me personally, my opinion is that's foolish advice. That's a black and white answer to a very nuanced question. And we have to think nuance here. So you have to sit down on your own, do some research, think about all these things, and then make up your mind. Not just from some lawyer on YouTube saying you should or shouldn't do this, or some random people who are just saying never talk to the police no matter what. So I hope that that answers the question from a real world, real life perspective. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released. Take care and have a great day.